There's a moment almost every dog owner has seen. Someone new walks in and your dog just stops. It goes stiff. It won't take a treat from their hand. And a little voice in your head says, "My dog knows something I don't. My dog can tell this person is bad." Here's the uncomfortable part. That story is almost certainly wrong. Your dog does not have a radar for bad people. It has no sense of who's a good person or an evil one, none. But here's why you should keep watching anyway. What your dog is actually doing in that hallway has been measured in labs from Kyoto to Vienna, and the real answer is stranger, sharper, and honestly more useful than the myth. Because your dog isn't reading a stranger's character, it's reading you. I'm going to say something that sounds cold, and then I'm going to spend the rest of this video showing you why it's actually the warmer, more honest story. Your dog is not a lie detector for the soul. When we say a dog senses a bad person, we're borrowing a human idea, morality, good character, bad character, and pasting it onto an animal that, as far as every controlled study can tell, has no concept of it. Dogs don't sit in judgment of who deserves what. They're not scanning for sin. And I get why the myth is everywhere. It's a beautiful idea. It makes our dogs feel like tiny moral guardians who love us so much they can smell a villain. It's the plot of 100 stories. The problem is, when researchers actually set out to test it, do dogs form opinions about people based on whether those people are good or bad? The results don't say what the myth says. They say something more specific. Here's the reframe I want you to hold on to for the next 20 minutes. Your dog isn't asking, "Is this a good person?" Your dog is asking 3 completely different questions, and it's asking them constantly. 1. Has this specific person been reliable to me? 2. How is this person treating the human I'm bonded to? And 3, the big one. What is my human's body telling me about this person right now? None of those 3 questions is about morality. All 3 are about behavior and cues. And when you understand that, the hallway moment stops being spooky and starts being something you can actually read yourself. So let's stop guessing and start seeing. Let me walk you through what the labs actually found, including the part where dogs turn out to be far less magical and far more interesting than we wanted them to be. Let's start with the simplest of the 3 questions: reliability. A team at Kyoto University, led by Akiko Takaoka, ran a now famous experiment. You know the classic trick: a person points at one of 2 containers, and the dog trots over to where they pointed. Dogs are unbelievably good at reading a human point. In fact, they're better at it than chimpanzees. Our closest relatives following a human gesture is one of the things dogs do almost freakishly well. So it would be easy to assume that a dog follows a point the way a calculator adds numbers, automatically, no judgment involved. The researchers wanted to know if that was true. Is following a point a reflex? Or is your dog quietly keeping score, deciding, gesture by gesture, whether the human giving the cue is actually worth trusting? In the first round, the experimenter pointed at a container that really did have food. The dogs followed the point. Easy. Then the experimenter did something sneaky. They pointed at a container the dog could see was empty. One lie. One time. And in the next round, when that same person pointed again, many of the dogs just didn't go. They'd been fooled once, and they downgraded that human on the spot. The researchers ran a control to make sure the dogs hadn't simply gotten bored or given up a fresh person pointing. Worked just fine. So it wasn't fatigue. It was specific. That person had become unreliable, and the dog updated. Now sit with what that is and isn't. The dog didn't decide the pointer was a bad person. It decided the pointer was an unreliable source of information. That's not morality. That's closer to how you'd feel about a weather app that's wrong 3 days in a row. You don't think the app is evil. You just stop trusting it. You've made a judgment about its reliability, not its character, and you made it fast, from direct experience, exactly like the dog. And that speed matters, because it tells you something about what this system is for. A dog that took 20 betrayals to update would be a dog that kept walking into empty containers. Evolution doesn't reward that. The dog that survives, the dog that eats, is the one that recalibrates on the first bad signal. So what looks like a delicate moral sensitivity is actually something much more practical and much older. A hair trigger reliability filter, built for a world where trusting the wrong cue costs you a meal. That's question 1. Reliability, tracked from direct experience, updated fast. But here's where it gets closer to the bad person feeling. What about when a stranger is unkind not to the dog, but to you? The same Kyoto lab, this time with Hitomi Chijiiwa leading, set up something clever with 54 dogs. Each dog watched its own owner struggle to open a container. The owner then turned and asked one of 2 strangers for help. In one version, that stranger helped. In another version, That stranger flatly refused, turned away, and ignored the owner. A third, neutral person, just sat there the whole time, doing nothing either way. Afterward, both strangers offered the dog a treat, and the researchers watched which hand the dog would take from. Here's the result, and it's the important one. When the stranger had helped the owner, the dogs chose randomly, no special favoritism. When the stranger had been neutral, again, random. But when the stranger had refused to help, the owner turned their back on the person the dog loves. The dogs were significantly less likely to take that stranger's treat. They avoided them. This was one of the first times anyone had shown a non-primate making what scientists call a third-party social evaluation, forming an impression of someone based on how that someone treated another individual in a situation that gave the dog no direct benefit at all. The dog wasn't fed by the refuser or the helper differently. It gained nothing by snubbing the snubber. It just did. But, and this is the detail the myth always skips, look at the shape of it. The dogs punished bad behavior toward their owner. They did not reward good behavior. Scientists call that a negativity bias. It's not, I like the good guy. It's, I'm wary of the one who was cold to my person. Your dog isn't handing out gold stars for kindness. It's flagging a threat signal. That is question 2. And notice it still isn't morality. The dog isn't reasoning that refusing to help is ethically wrong. It's reacting to a social pattern. This individual was hostile to my attachment figure. Now, you've probably seen the flip side of this claimed online, the idea that dogs flock to generous, kind people and shun stingy ones, like tiny judges of good character. And there is real research here. It's worth looking at closely, because it's the single best example of how easy it is to mistake a dog's self-interest for a dog's morality. In one study out of Hood College, dogs watched 2 people, one who was generous with food and one who was selfish and kept it. Afterward, the dogs tended to approach the generous person. Sounds like moral judgment, right? The kind one wins. But watch the trap. Argentine researchers, led by Fabrizio Carballo, ran a sharper version, a generous experimenter who let the dog eat, versus a selfish one who pointed to food and then ate it themselves. The family dogs did eventually learn to prefer the generous one. But here's the catch. It took them around a dozen trials to learn it. It wasn't instant recognition of a good soul. It was slow, trial by trial learning of a simple rule: this hand equals food, that hand equals nothing. And the Kyoto scientists themselves flagged exactly this. They pointed out that prefer the generous person results can be fully explained by dogs just seeking the best shot at immediate food going where the snacks are. That's not a verdict on character. That's an animal being sensibly greedy, which is precisely why the Owner-Snub study from earlier is the stronger evidence. In that one, the dog gained nothing by avoiding the person who was cold to its owner. There was no snack on the line. That's the closest thing to a genuine social evaluation dogs have shown, and even that leans negative, and even that doesn't always replicate. So keep the pattern in view. Every time a study looks like, my dog can spot a good person, dig one layer down and you usually find something simpler underneath. Reliability, self-interest, or emotion. Never morality. Here's where I have to be honest with you, because this channel is built on evidence, not on telling you what you want to hear. If dogs really carry a robust radar for who treats people well or badly, that ability should show up again and again, in lots of labs, with lots of designs. So scientists tried to push it further into learning about people just by watching, without any direct experience of their own. At the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Marie Nitzschner and her colleagues tested this with dogs. When a dog had directly experienced a person, one who played with it and was friendly, versus one who ignored it, the dog later preferred the friendly one. Direct experience worked. But when dogs only watched that same friendly person be kind to another dog and never interacted themselves, they showed no preference afterward. The title of the paper says it plainly. Dogs evaluate humans on the basis of direct experiences only. Then it got even more humbling. In 2022, a team at the Wolf Science Center in Austria ran a careful reputation study with 9 wolves and 6 dogs, hand-raised, living in packs. The animals watched 2 unfamiliar people, one generous, who fed a dog demonstrator, and one selfish, who withheld food. Then the animals got to choose. At the group level, neither the dogs nor the wolves reliably preferred the generous person over the selfish one, not after watching, and not even after their own direct experience. The reputation effect that sounds so obvious in a YouTube thumbnail just didn't hold up cleanly. So the honest scientific picture in 2026 is not dogs are moral detectors. It's this. Dogs can sometimes track how a specific person behaves, especially through their own direct experience, and especially when someone is cold to their owner, but that ability is patchy, it leans on the negative, and it often fails to replicate the moment you take away the dog's personal stake. That is not the profile of a soul-reading superpower. That is the profile of an animal doing fast, self-relevant social bookkeeping. Here's a beautiful piece of evidence for what's really going on. The Kyoto group ran the exact same refuse to help your owner experiment, but with 36 cats instead of dogs. The cats did nothing with the information. They showed no avoidance of the person who snubbed their owner, and no preference for the helper. Statistically, flat. No effect. Now, this isn't a cats are cold joke. It's a clue. The dog effect likely rides on something dogs have been shaped for over roughly 15,000 years of living alongside us. An intense sensitivity to human social behavior and a deep attachment to a specific person. Cats bond too, but they weren't sculpted to hang on our every social move the way the dog's bad person reaction isn't a moral sense floating free. It's bolted directly to the bond. Take away that dog-human wiring, and the effect largely disappears. If dogs aren't reading character, what are they reading with such uncanny accuracy that it fools us into thinking it's magic, emotion, yours and other people's? And here, unlike the shaky reputation research, the evidence is strong, and it replicates across labs. This is the part your dog is genuinely, jaw-droppingly good at. So good that it's easy to see why people reach for the word psychic. It isn't psychic, it's just a level of emotional attention no human in your life comes close to. At the Misread Research Institute in Vienna, Corson Muller's team trained dogs to tell the difference between a happy human face and an angry one, using only the top half, or only the bottom half, of the face. The dogs learned it, and then they transferred that skill to brand new faces they'd never seen, performing well above chance across every test condition. That rules out the boring explanation that they'd just memorized one photo. They'd grab the actual emotional expression. There was a tell buried in the data too. Dogs that were rewarded for choosing the angry face learned much more slowly than dogs rewarded for the happy one. It's as if approaching an angry human face went against a grain the dogs already had. They didn't want to walk toward the anger. Then the University of Lincoln, with Natalia Albuquerque, pushed it into a whole new dimension. They showed 17 dogs, 2 faces at once, one happy, one angry, while playing a single voice. A happy-sounding voice or an angry-sounding one, in a language the dogs had never heard, no training. And the dogs looked significantly longer at the face that matched the emotion in the voice. 67% of the time, they looked toward the congruent face, the one whose expression matched the sound, a result far beyond chance. That's called cross-modal emotion recognition. In plain English, your dog combines what it sees on a face with what it hears in a voice and pulls out a single answer. This person is angry. This person is happy. That's a genuinely sophisticated skill, and it's the real engine behind the hallway moment, not a character scan, an emotion scan. Which brings us to the third question, and the most important one. Because the loudest emotional signal in that hallway isn't coming from the stranger, it's coming from you. At the University of Milan, researchers studied something called social referencing, the same thing a toddler does when it faces something new and immediately looks up at a parent to check, should I be scared? They set up an ambiguous, slightly alarming object, an electric fan, with plastic streamers whipping around, and let dogs encounter it with their owners. Most of the dogs did exactly what a child would. They looked at the strange object, then turned and looked at their owner's face, checking. And here's the part that matters. When the owner reacted with a positive, encouraging voice and expression, the dogs were more willing to approach and relax. When the owner reacted with a fearful, negative tone, the dogs held back and stuck close. Read that again with the stranger in mind. When someone new walks in and you tense up even a little, even the amount you don't think anyone can see, your shoulders lift, your breathing changes, your voice tightens, your hand freezes on the leash. Your dog is a cross-modal emotion reading machine that has spent its whole life studying exactly one human above all others, you. It catches the shift instantly. And then, like that dog at the fan, it borrows your verdict. So the dog goes stiff, and you think, my dog can tell this person is bad. But your dog didn't read the stranger. Your dog read you. Let me pull all of this into one clean picture, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. There is no little judge inside your dog weighing people's souls. What there is, and what the labs keep finding, is a stack of 3 real, measurable systems, all running at once. A reliability tracker that downgrades people who mislead it. A bond protection reflex that flags anyone cold to the person it loves. And an emotion reader, tuned across faces and voices, aimed most intensely at you. And I want to be clear about why the moral radar version isn't just wrong. It's actually a smaller, sadder story than the truth. The myth says your dog performs a magic trick you can never learn. It sees evil. You can't. End of story. It turns your dog into a mysterious oracle and turns you into a bystander. The evidence says something far better. Your dog's bad person reaction is, more often than not, a mirror. It's your own nervous system, reflected back at you through an animal that reads you better than most humans in your life ever will. That stiff posture in the hallway isn't information about the stranger. It's information about you, a live readout of a feeling you may not have even noticed you were having. That's the reframe. Your dog is not a character detector. Your dog is an emotional amplifier for your reliability, for how the world treats you, and above all, for how you feel right now. It takes the quietest signal in the room, which is usually coming from you, and turns the volume all the way up. Think about how often this plays out without you noticing. You get a phone call with bad news, and your dog appears at your feet, unasked. A relative you find exhausting comes to stay, and your dog is oddly clingy the whole visit. You're arguing with someone and the dog leaves the room or plants itself between you. We tell ourselves these are little acts of judgment, the dog picking sides, the dog knowing, but run each one through the mechanism. In every case, the dog isn't scoring the other person. It's tracking the one variable it cares about most in the entire world, the state of you. Your voice, your posture, your scent chemistry when you're stressed, all of it shifting, all of it read in real time by an animal that has quietly made you the center of its attention for years. Now, does this mean the hallway moment is meaningless? Absolutely not. And this is the part I really want you to keep. Sometimes your dog stiffens and you genuinely weren't feeling anything conscious at all. In those cases, your dog may be picking up on something concrete and non-magical. A person moving in a jerky, unpredictable way. Someone staring hard and leaning in, which dogs find threatening. A smell of fear or adrenaline on someone who is themselves nervous around dogs. A hat, a beard, a uniform, a limp, something outside the dog's normal experience. Dogs are pattern machines. Unfamiliar patterns make them cautious. That caution can look exactly like moral judgment, but it's just novelty and body language being read at high resolution. So your dog's reaction is real data. It's just not the data you thought. It's not this person is bad. It's this person is behaving in a way that reads as unpredictable or threatening, or my human is tense and I'm flagging it. That's worth paying attention. 2. It's just not a verdict on anyone's character. And I know what some of you are thinking right now because I'd think it too. Pet Mind Labs. My dog once growled at a guy who turned out to be trouble. Explain that. I believe you. But look at it through everything we just covered. A person who's about to do harm usually behaves differently. They move with tension. They fixate. They crowd. They carry their own fear or aggression in their body. And, yes, in their scent. Those are exactly the concrete, physical signals dogs are elite at detecting. Your dog didn't peer into that person's intentions. It read a body that was broadcasting threat, and it may have read the spike in your own alarm on top of it. The outcome can be genuinely protective. The mechanism is still behavior and emotion, not a moral X-ray. And that distinction isn't me splitting hairs. It's the difference between trusting your dog as a superb behavior sensor, which it is, and trusting it as an infallible character judge, which it absolutely is not, and which can lead you to write off perfectly kind people just because your dog was startled by a hat. All right. Let's turn all of this into something you can use tonight, the next time your dog goes still when someone walks in, because knowing the mechanism changes what you should do in the moment. First, check yourself before you read your dog. The instant your dog reacts to a new person, do a quick body scan of your own state. Are your shoulders up? Is your grip tight on the leash? Did your voice just climb half an octave? Because if you're tense, you can't tell whether your dog is reacting to the person or to you. You've contaminated the reading. This is the single most useful habit in this whole video. Your dog is downstream of your nervous system. Steady yourself first, and you'll get a cleaner signal. Second, give your dog a calm verdict to borrow. Remember, the fan study dogs take their cue from your reaction. So if you genuinely trust the person who just walked in, hand your dog that information the way it actually listens, through your voice and body. A relaxed tone, loose posture, an easy, "Hey, come say hi," that's you telling your dog, in the only language that lands, "I've evaluated this, and we're okay." You are literally doing the reassurance a parent gives a nervous toddler. Your dog is built to accept it. Third, never force the introduction. Here's where the reliability research matters. If you drag your hesitant dog up to a stranger, or let the stranger loom over it and reach for its head, You're overriding the dog's own risk assessment, and you can teach it that new people plus your pressure equals a bad time. Let the dog approach on its own timeline, or not at all. A dog that's allowed to say not yet is a dog that stays confident. The gold standard is to let the new person ignore the dog completely and let the dog make the first move. Fourth, let the stranger become reliable. Remember, Nitzschner direct experience is what actually moves a dog, far more than anything it merely observes. So, if you want your dog to warm up to someone, don't lecture the dog. Let the person be the source of good, predictable things. A tossed treat from a distance, a calm presence, a game on the dog's terms. You're not proving the person is good. You're building a track record the dog can feel. Reliability, one real interaction at a time. And fifth, the one for the genuinely important cases. When your dog reacts and you are calm, take it seriously as information, not as a moral ruling. If you've steadied yourself, you trust the situation, and your dog is still tight, watchful, unwilling, don't dismiss it, and don't dramatize it. Your dog may be reading real body language you missed, someone moving strangely, staring, crowding, or nervous themselves. You don't have to decide the person is bad. You just have to respect that your dog is uncomfortable and give it space and distance. That's not superstition. That's using a very good sensor for exactly what it's good at, reading behavior and emotion in the moment without asking it to do a job it can't do, which is judging character. And one more, for the long game, because a lot of "my dog hates strangers" is really "my dog met too few strangers." Remember that a huge chunk of a dog's caution is simply novelty. Unfamiliar patterns, a cane, a wheelchair, a deep voice, a big beard, a person of a size or gait your dog rarely sees get flagged not because they're dangerous, but because they're new. The more calm, positive exposure a dog gets to the full variety of people, especially when young, but honestly at any age, the wider its definition of normal becomes, and the fewer harmless people trip the alarm. You're not teaching your dog that people are good. You're teaching it that people are familiar and predictable, which, to a pattern machine, is the same thing as safe. Every relaxed encounter, every stranger who tossed a treat and then left your dog alone, quietly shrinks the list of things that make your dog go stiff in the hallway. Do you see what all six have in common? Not one of them requires your dog to be a mind reader or a moral oracle. Every single one works better when you understand what your dog is actually doing, reading reliability, protecting the bond, widening its sense of normal, and above all, reading you. So the next time your dog goes still in the hallway and stares at someone new, I hope the little voice in your head says something different. Not, "my dog can see something evil that I can't," but "my dog is reading the room, and a lot of that room is me." Because that's the truth the science keeps landing on, from Kyoto to Vienna to Milan. Your dog doesn't hold a mirror up to a stranger's character. It holds a mirror up to you, your steadiness, your history of being fair to it, and the feelings you carry into a room without saying a word. 15,000 years didn't build a moral detector into your dog. They built the most attentive student your inner life will ever have. And honestly, I think that's the better magic. A creature that can't tell a good person from a bad one but can tell, instantly, when yours isn't okay. It can't weigh a stranger's character, but it has memorized the exact sound of your voice when you're calm, and it knows the second that sound goes tight. It will never judge the guy at the door, but it will always, always know how that guy made you feel. That isn't a judge, that's a companion. If this changed how you'll read your dog the next time someone walks through your door, tell me in the comments about the moment your dog reacted to a person, and now that you know the mechanism, what do you think it was actually picking up? I read these, and the stories from this community are the best part of my week. And if you want to keep learning to read your dog by the evidence instead of the myths to stop guessing and start seeing, subscribe to Pet Mind Labs. Next time, we're going into why your dog stares into your eyes, and the measurable loop that happens in both your brains when it does. At Pet Mind Labs, we don't do experts say. We do the studies by name, so you always know exactly what's real. You think your dog can sense a bad person? It can't. There's no moral radar in there, no sense of good or evil. So what's really happening when your dog goes stiff at a stranger? 3 things, all measured in labs. 1. Your dog tracks who's reliable, fool it once, and it downgrades you. Kyoto, 2015. 2. It flags anyone cold to you but only the cold ones, not the kind ones. Kyoto, 54 dogs. 3. The big one. Your dog reads emotion across faces and voices, and the loudest signal in the room is you. When a stranger walks in, and you tense up your grip, your breath, your voice, your dog catches it instantly and borrows your verdict. It didn't read them, it read you. Follow Pet Mind Labs for the science, by name. Your dog can't tell a good person from a bad one, no moral radar exists. But it can tell instantly when you tense up. That stiff posture at the door? Often it's your dog reading your nervous system, not the stranger's character. Milan social referencing study. New video. What dogs actually detect about people. Reliability, threats to you, and emotion. Across face plus voice. Every study named. Have you seen your dog call someone? What do you think it caught?